The widespread practice of neglecting lower body exercise in exercise programs had left the gestalt in advanced atrophy until the development of SCP-5465-1. By reverse engineering it, containment researchers developed the J Bravo disruption agent, which promotes neglect of, rather than attention to, lower body exercise. The discovery has been a paradigm shift in parakinesiology. Truth be told, leg day, when you are as short as I am, is cheat day. Not very good at kickboxing, though. How do you do, fellow kids, and welcome. It is June 4th. I'm your host, Blue Soul, SCP Wiki moderator, chat administrator, author, loving husband, dog petter, cologne aficionado, Tottenham Hotspur supporter, Scuttle Overlord, and 5'2" tiny baby man. So, not a ton of articles today. We have 3. I'm going to spend a little time at the end of this just sharing something that I wrote on the SCP subreddit about an hour ago with regard to canons. The trope, there is no canon, that phrase has sort of been a pain in our ass when we try to reiterate what that actually means to people. I saw a thing today that I didn't really follow, and I tried to put up something of a counterpoint to it. So I'm gonna talk about that after we talk about these 3 articles from the day. So let's talk about the first one. It's called Shuffle Puppies. It is a screenplay. Act 1, Scene 2 of a screenplay, actually. This is by Henzoid. This is not terribly long. It's pretty amusing. Coming into it in the equivalent of Chapter 2, I feel like I've missed a few things with the narrator, who appears to actually be a swarm of hornets, angry hornets, maybe, that actually interrupt the scene. It's not very long. It's amusing. I don't know if you need a whole lot more, if this thing is being broken up into as many scenes as it looks like it's going to be, set in Broken Masquerade. All in all, entertaining, not a whole lot to find fault with. And it's an interesting format, right? Like, you don't see much in the way of screenplay posted on the site. So for that alone, this is cool. This is something unique. Check it out. This was a +1 for me. Moving on now, SCP-5465, titled Don't Skip Leg Day by Christoffel. This is a first-timer piece and a Corpse Con entry. What they were given was a cross-section of the human thigh and a bunch of notes about having the different 365D class doing exercises related to the upper body. Go, basically. Where we went with this was pretty entertaining, in that we've laid the groundwork for potentially a really good GOI in Zarathustra's gym, but this premise wasn't really taken to its natural conclusion. We didn't get everything that we could have gotten out of it. T. Rutherford in the comments worded it very well and worded it better than I could in my own head. We have this climax. We redefine parapsychology to parakinesiology, but we don't do much after that. We propose a lot of change in the Foundation, and that part is really fun and it's really interesting, but we don't go back and answer a bunch of questions that we've made. And what's the deal with this GOI? We're apparently trying to recruit them. Who are they? What do they look like? What do they sound like? You've given the reader no mental image, no personality for what could be one of the zaniest GOIs possible. Leotards, leg warmers, give me something. So until Rutherford had said that, I'm like, you know what? That makes a lot of sense. We could have gotten a lot more out of this piece. For the hand they were given, this is an outstanding effort, but and they've been very active in the comments taking this feedback, and it looks like, taking it in the spirit that it was intended, and I hope that they will do something with that in the future. They can't during this contest, but maybe they'll give this a rethink. Maybe I'll write about Zarathustra's gym in the meantime. We'll try and throw in some leotards, some leg warmers, and maybe we'll solve the mystery on what this secret song is that through leg day manhood can achieve a new realm of existence. And last but not least here, SCP-5805, titled You Can't Go Back by Mini-Meats. This was really good. This is short. You can almost fit the whole thing on one page, and it is a punch to the gut. It tells a really simple story, but it's one that is very effective, and tells you just enough, shows you just enough about the scene to strike that balance of, telling a really sad story without beating your reader over the head with it. Really, really good piece. This is currently at plus 52 in about a day, with my +1 added to it. About the only thing I will say is that the procedures in the description are both, they feel a bit dated, in that we're using an SCP for a purpose that a totally mundane item would be able to do just as well, and that we have sort of expected tropes of the item makes you feel a certain way, and that can be something of a shortcut to tell the reader how they should feel while reading the piece. But between the two of them, the procedures in the description overall are both so short that it's not a big enough deal for me to really concern myself over it. If you want to talk build up to payoff, this is a really short piece, so you don't have very much build up. Even a slightly above average payoff will feel really outsized. It will feel really powerful for having done it in that short of a length. And that is very much what's happening here. So, well done, +1. Now, before I let you guys go, I was going to talk about this thing that I saw on the subreddit today, currently sitting at almost 1,500 points at 99% upvoted. And I'm going to admit I don't really understand what it's trying to tell me. In a nutshell, the author here is attaching classes of canon to various elements or things about the site, assigning an A-class canon to the SCPs themselves, a B-class canon to specifically the Resurrection canon and the Scarlet King, a Class C canon to a thing he sort of invented out of other canons. And then, we've got like 6 tiers of this, and then talking about fan works and all of that. I don't know if it's, really obvious to people that all of this is a fan work. Like, let's not put ourselves on too high a pedestal here. This is all SCP-173 fanfic. If you're not comfortable in your own skin when being told that you're writing fanfic about a 12-year-old 4chan post, I'm sorry. That is the real state of things. So I wrote something in the vein of a counterpoint, just trying to hammer home what there is no canon actually means. It's a conversation that I find myself having to have on Reddit every so often. We are currently at over 416,000 subscribers to our SCP. My work with the wiki actually begins on Reddit. I started as a moderator of the subreddit before I was actually even wiki staff. I came on to help out with CSS and assigning flares and so on, and got started there with only a couple thousand subscribers, and now we're at 416K with 1,000 active users at any given time. So there's a huge crowd there, and for the most part, they're not as in tune with the day-to-day of what the site is doing and what the current events are and what new writers are doing, what new articles are conveying. So even before we get there to not having, their collective fingers on the pulse of the site, it's not always understanding some of the conventions that we put out there, like there is no canon. So I want to be absolutely clear on the intended meaning of that. When we say there is no canon, what we mean is that there is no authoritative canon. We, as SCP Wiki staff, are not directing how the story plays out. It is not our job. We very specifically elected not to do that. We are little more than custodians of this user-submitted content. So what you're doing when you write an article, you write something and you put it on the main list, is you are saying, this is canon too. It's all on equal weight. It is all on equal footing. And in this Reddit post, I led in with saying, when we say there is no canon, does that mean I can write an article where the Foundation is actually a shoe store, and the D-Class are immortal space pirates, and SCP-173 makes a mean Cubano, and I can put that right in the SCP main list? Is that what there is no canon means? Yes. That's exactly what it means. And what's more, it will be treated by the SCP Wiki staff as being equally valid as SCP-173. This does not mean your work will necessarily survive, because the flip side of there is no canon, but there is most assuredly, let's call it a hive mind for the sake of finding an easy word. It's not totally accurate, but it'll work for this conversation. When you start moving away from the expected format, what you choose to move away from and how far you move from that baseline are two totally separate factors, but they will determine how ready that hive mind is to accept your changes. So if you go back to 4chan, where everything got started, 2007, 2008, you would find that when 173 was first posted, what came after it, as people were like, this is cool, I think I see what's going on, let me try my hand at one. What do you think happened? Because I know what happened. I've been trying to, collate something of a history. We talk about, this concept of a hive mind and sticking to the format. This goes back all the way to the very beginning. The first several SCP items were all statues. Every one of them. So what it took was a really interesting, really scary story that wasn't about a statue, but otherwise fit the flavor, it fit the format, and people said, okay, it doesn't just have to be statues. This is good. You can do a lot more with horror writing when it's not just about statues. As somebody took it upon themselves to begin cataloging these different creations on editthis.info, in that initial conversation, we're like, okay, here's the edit this. People start posting your stuff there. So we've got a collected, one place for all of them. And the conversation was immediately like, well, we should start to standardize some stuff. And it was a good ways into that conversation where the first object class was created. I think a lot of people would assume that since 173 was the first article, that Euclid was the first object class. And it was not. Nor was it safe, nor was it Keter. The first object class was Trinity. So, what was it about object class Trinity that nobody followed suit? I don't honestly know. I don't have the answer to that. But the object class itself, the concept of an object class, caught fire. People saw they're like, okay, an object class. It doesn't really have to mean anything. We just throw a word in there. That's cool. We can do that. And then it was quickly like, okay, there's no object class in this article, so it's not a real SCP. Kind of ignoring that there were a couple dozen written up to that point that didn't have one. But this is what happens. Something becomes absorbed into sort of that collective, this is what we're building. And then you start saying, stuff that would have been valid before, now it's not. It sucks, but that's how it goes. So yeah, Trinity was the first object class. And when you think about that holy trinity of safe, Euclid, and Keter, this is a fight that has been not really a fight anymore, aside from a few, really, really conservative users, as it were. This has been put to bed for a long while, because once SCP-2000 sort of broke that mold, and it did it by excellent writing and a clear reason for its deviation from the norm. By doing both of those things, the collective hive mind looked at it and said, I see what you're doing. I love the execution. We're now okay with this additional object class. We understand what it's for, and we're going to start using it. So when we say there is no canon, it is really just a question of how good is your work? Is your work good enough to justify the changes that you're making to the standard? The example that I gave in this post was something that has been rolling around in my head for quite a long time, which is I want to do this thing, want to write something of a canon myself where the foundation is public knowledge, not in the context of like Broken Masquerade where they were exposed. I want something where they've always been around. They're a public service like a firefighter or a dog catcher, that you pick up the phone, you dial up SCP, and they'll deal with your, paranormal problems, big or small. And you can go one of two routes here. If you go the route of making it a canon, you find like-minded authors and you start building the thing as a canon, then you have a lot more breathing room, because you are going to the hive mind and saying, yes, hive mind, I understand the importance of the tenet, the trope, that the foundation is secret. I understand that the veil is a pivotal part of the format. So I'm writing this canon where we change these ground rules, knowing full well that this is not what the hive mind wants. We're going to work in our little lane here, and it doesn't affect nobody else has to worry about it. Nobody else has to think about it. But that's not the only way you can go. If, and this is a big if, but if I posted it to the main list and I killed it, say I knock it out of the park, and it actually survives, let's go a step further. Let's say I had just a 1 in a million idea, and I write it flawlessly, and it catches fire, and it ends up, at, let's shoot for the moon here. Let's say it ends up at plus 1,000 in a month. And then somebody better than I, and there's a good list of those people, somebody better than I writes something even better using that same premise, that the foundation is public knowledge. Now, all of a sudden, you've got two, what the upvotes sort of determine importance, right? Like, to an extent. So you've got two pieces that are seen within the hive mind as being of cultural importance, and they disregard what was previously a key tenet of the quote-unquote canon of what the hive mind says is important. You can do that. There is nothing preventing you. It just takes a little inertia to overcome and a shitload of good writing. So, if you're up for the challenge, I would really like to see the D class be immortal space pirates by next year. If we can make that happen, I'll be really impressed. Good night, fellow kids.